Hi, everybody. I've just finished reading a book that studies the existential crisis that the marketing function and marketers may be facing today. Not only does it offer a broad perspective and the reasons for the tectonic shifts that have taken place in the past 5 years, it also forecasts some of the most imminent changes in the next 5. Critically, it offers a survival guide. I'm talking about Quantum Marketing by Raja Rajamanar that releases this week. Now, Raja is perfectly placed to have authored this book, given that he's the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer of MasterCard, also the president of its healthcare business. He's also the president of the World Federation of Advertisers, whose members together account for about 90% of the world's marketing spends. He's joining us today from Cincinnati. Raja, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. Absolutely a pleasure being on this show.
So congratulations on a compelling book that doesn't pull its punches. You've made quite a case for sort of restoring the relevance and value of both the marketing function as well as the marketing team and marketers. Why do you think that marketers need to market themselves? Why do you think that marketers are facing this dilemma of whether they are seen as relevant or not?
So, Anuradha, what happened in marketing, if you look at it, historically, marketers have been very qualitative, creative, intuitive, and they used and exercised their judgment. And that's what was really the strength of their function and their ability to perform extremely well in their function. However, since 1990s, there have been some dramatic changes in the world of marketing. So first and foremost, data and technology have entered the space of marketing. Because marketers are more qualitative, they really did not get their heads around the technology and data aspects, and they started losing some of their relevance, and they started losing some of the grip and hold over the field. So non-marketers have started setting the agenda. The ability for marketers to measure ROI, the return on investment, etc., has become really possible. And when CEOs and CFOs who are coming under more and more pressure, when they're questioning marketers as to what the marketing activities are giving by way of business results, they are sort of little, like deer caught in headlights. And they start giving answers which are marketing answers. So you cannot give marketing answers to business questions. That immediately brings a credibility gap. And if I'm a CEO or a CFO, I'll say, look, these guys, they seem to be a little fluffy. And that starts eroding the trust and the credibility. And that has been a downhill journey till now. So much so that a recent survey by McKinsey has said more than 70% of all CEOs, in fact, it's much higher than that, have indicated that they do not have confidence in their marketing teams to drive growth for their business. So that's one big crisis. The second part of it is marketing as a function is getting fragmented.
Yes.
Historically, Philip Kotler has said there are 4 P's of marketing, and that has stood to be the framework for marketing for decades. Now what happens, the 4 P's of marketing, product is not handled by marketing in many companies. Pricing is not handled by them. Place, which is distribution, is not handled by them. So marketers are barely holding on to a part of promotions at the most. And non-marketers are now running the show as far as those other 3 P's are concerned. And finally, many companies have started replacing CMO roles with chief growth officers, chief revenue officers, and chief customer officers and the likes, and they're not marketing people. So there is a clear and present existential crisis for marketing. Some companies are lucky that it hasn't yet hit them, but it is just around the corner for them. In many companies, which are the hardcore packaged goods companies, have eliminated the roles of CMOs already. So this is the situation that we are in, unfortunately.
This situation coincides with what you call the 5th paradigm of marketing, isn't it? Are we already in the 5th paradigm? Is the time of the 5th paradigm now, or are we on the cusp of the 5th paradigm?
I would say we are on the cusp of the 5th paradigm, and the 5th paradigm is really imminent. Right? And what that basically means is that, if you look at each evolution, each stage of evolution of marketing, it was driven by about a couple of technologies. So from paradigm 1 to paradigm 2 was driven by radio and television. Paradigm 2 to 3 was internet and data
Yes.
analytics.
Yes.
Paradigm 4 was social media and mobility, which is mobile devices all over the place. Each one of those changes were driven by two technologies. But now we are at the verge of seeing a tsunami of technologies, almost 24 of them, like artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality,
Yes.
wearables, drones, 3D printing, autonomous cars. The list is crazy. And these are very, very compelling and impactful technologies that are coming at us. And marketing is going to be disrupted in an unprecedented fashion because these technologies are going to give a different kind of an interaction model for the consumers to interact with their environments. And that's also true for businesses. And marketers have to quickly get their heads around these new technologies and be able to leverage and deploy them in their own marketing scenario. And if they don't, they'll get obsolete very quickly.
In the quantum marketer's toolbox or toolkit, data analytics, which has taken center stage for the last two paradigms of marketing, the way you see it, will continue to be important and perhaps become even more important, right? I want to delve a little bit into some of the challenges that throws up, and you talk about it at great length in your book. One is, the ethical issues, the privacy concerns that all consumers, regulators, governments are beginning to put up there front and center, and which now seems to be a business conflict between the large tech giants, isn't it? You have Apple and Facebook take each other on precisely this issue. How should enlightened marketers who will be affected most by constraints on how data is mined deal with this? How should you be ready for what's going to come in terms of curbs, and what should you do as an ethical marketer who does want to use data?
So I think the last point you mentioned is actually the starting point, being an ethical marketer, right? First, as a marketer, we need to put ourselves in the shoes of consumers because we are consumers and people before we are marketers. So as an individual, how would I want my data to be used? What part of my daily lifestyle and daily activities do I want somebody to track and monitor? And if they monitor, how are they using it? Do I know how they're using it? Have I given them permission to do that? And where all my data is floating around without my permission, I don't want that to happen. Do I have a right to be forgotten? Meaning my data has to be completely eliminated. At the end of the day, it's my data. So as a person, as an individual, I want all those for sure. Now, if I want that way for myself as an individual, then when I put on my marketer's hat, I better act with responsibility as far as my consumers and my customers are concerned. So the rules have to exactly be the same. So if you look at the principles outlined, for example, by Tim Cook, that privacy is a basic human right, and I completely agree and subscribe to it. So we have, on the one hand, access to data, which gives us a lot of power in many ways of insights. But on the other hand, it also comes with responsibility, both to respect and protect the privacy of the individuals on one hand, and also the security of the data against breaches and so on. Now, how do market? It's again, like many things in life, it's easier said than done. The key thing is, how do you make it happen? I'm totally supportive of some of the strategies that are being outlined by the likes of Apple and Google. It makes lives difficult for marketers in the short term. There is no question about it.
Yes.
But the current way of how we are treating data has to alter. Because even with all the best intentions, if there is a data breach and the consumer is completely compromised, that's something which is not good. Now, the key thing is, are there new methodologies which are coming where the data is completely anonymized upfront, where it is converted into cohorts like what Google is saying? Or in Asia, there is an alliance called My ID Alliance that has come about, where you actually put the data together in a green room kind of a thing or a data room kind of a thing, and where you try to totally anonymize and be able to understand. So because as marketers, you need to know who you are targeting, who you're retargeting, what your returns are, because you need to optimize, and you also have the responsibility to advertise in a relevant fashion to the consumer so it is non-annoying and non-intrusive to them. That comes with data analytics. So you need data analytics. but the form in which it is available and the safeguards with which it comes, I think they have to totally alter. So I'm totally supportive of those.
You also talk about how apps which we download, with such regularity these days and rely on so much for our transactions and our consumption of media. You see the design of apps also having to change and to incorporate data privacy layers right at every stage of the transaction and interaction, isn't it?
Totally. Like, if you look at many of the apps, they actually have so much of data about you, even in categories that they have nothing to do with. You wonder why. Are they in the business of providing these services, or are they in the business of just harvesting data and then monetizing the data on the back end? That's not how it has to be, right? And if you look at somebody like a GDPR, right, in the European Union,
Yes.
the principles they have outlined are absolutely right. Now, what we need is a via media between the principles and the pragmatism. Because the principles are so lofty that you cannot then do anything at all on the back end as far as marketing is concerned. That's totally pointless, because marketing actually is a huge economic activity that sustains and helps communities in a big way. Now, the key thing is today, the solutions that are available are very rudimentary, but there is a beginning of this movement that is happening, and that movement is getting accelerated, particularly with the declarations of whether it is Apple or Google, and I think it's a good thing.
I'm sort of segueing out of this point into something we saw happen last year, which is that the World Federation of Advertisers, many of the companies that are part of this federation actually hit pause or reduced their spending on Facebook and other social media platforms, right? And some of it hasn't come back. And some of this happened in the backdrop of the fact that last year we saw the US presidential elections, we saw a very, very polarized political, social, racially charged climate in the US, and we saw what happened right up to January 6th and the insurrection at the US Capitol. My question to you is, that pause that was hit by advertisers individually and collectively even, did you see that have results in the way it helped, that you brands stopped associating with the kind of hateful content that was available on social media sites like Facebook?
The pause that some brands have hit upon, they were driven by two fundamental reasons. The first one is the brand safety. So is my brand appearing in a place that is not safe or appropriate for my brand? And on the other hand, because marketers actually fund all the social media platforms big time, does it come with the responsibility that you hold the social media platforms accountable for societal safety as well? Like, for example, when there was the Christchurch shooting.
Yes.
And it was literally broadcast live. Yes. That's horrific, right?
Yes.
Now, the key thing is, irrespective of the technological constraints or the big good intentions, the fact is, should the social media companies be held accountable to it? The answer is yes. I think these are the two things which have driven last year for some amount of pause to be taken by some brands. But what we did is, it's not just taking a temporary pause. The key thing is we need to work together with the social media platforms and with the brands to come together, and with the tech companies as well, to come together to really evolve solutions. So we formed at the World Federation of Advertisers a task force called GARM, G-A-R-M,
yes.
Global Alliance for Responsible Media. And the whole idea for this is about brand safety and also about societal safety, and how do you make sure that the internet is a safe place for everyone. And I think it's gaining momentum. All the social media platforms have joined hands. They have joined the partnership. Many of the brands have joined. In fact, most of the brands have joined. And a lot of MarTech companies, the marketing technology companies, they have joined. So there is a good amount of momentum already. You'll be surprised, actually. The basic thing is, how do you define what is hateful speech?
Yes. Now, how do you standardize that definition? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the first thing we have been able to agree so far, which is a huge accomplishment in itself. Because when you get into it, you realize what you think is hateful is not hateful for somebody. They think it's perfectly fine. And there are cultural differences, and there are different levels of tolerances for folks.
Yes.
So getting all of them to agree to a common definition, to a common standard, in itself a big deal. And that's exactly what one first step we have taken, which is a good big step.
What about the others, like, to collect the data in a unified way, third-party verification, and tools that will operate in a way across the entire ecosystem and not be sort of proprietary to each of these tech giants? What's the
I think
progress on that?
that's
What's the assessment on how that's going?
It's moving. It's moving. I would not say that we are already declaring victory, but it's moving in the right direction. The pace could be much better, but it's a democratic process in sense because you need all the brands and all the players who have to really come to the table and agree to move along the recommended direction, right? So the progress is slower than what we would like to, but it is definitely moving in the right direction. Look, some of the things that look so commonsensical when you look at it, you say, look, I'm paying money. As an industry, I'm saying, I'm paying money to the social medias. 90%, 95% of all the revenues of the social media platforms, which are multi-billion-dollar companies, are actually funded by the marketing dollars that the marketers are actually giving.
Yes.
So the key thing is you would say, if I'm paying so much of money, I need to know that am I getting what I should be getting or what I think I'm getting? And should it not be audited as opposed to self-reported? It looks very evident and simple from a marketer's point of view. But it's not so simple if you were to actually look at the mechanics of how do you audit those data? Do you have the talent even who understands the level of depth and technology in the entire ecosystem that they're able to audit effectively and so on? So some of these solutions might look very obvious, but they're not so obvious. When you start getting into the details and peeling the onion, there are more and more and more layers of complexity that to get to the bottom of the truth is very difficult, but we are making progress.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that in the past few years, marketers have sort of had to play catch up with the tech companies. And today, whether it's because of societal brand safety, societal safety, there's also a little bit of trying to change the balance of power in this equation, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, y'all are the guys with the money who the tech giants and the media, they control, want to woo and have have access to your spends. But on the other hand, you seem to be in let's say the weaker position, or have been in the weaker position in the past few years. Am I right to see it that way?
I would hate to agree with you, but I have to agree. Right? This is exactly what I mean, that marketers have not kept up pace with technology and with data. When that didn't happen, somebody else has started driving the bus and we have become passengers. And because we did not educate ourselves as a community, we are not able to ask the right questions. And if a question is given to us, even if we come up with the right question, we are not able to understand those answers. To separate the signal from the noise. What is the wheat and what's the chaff? We don't know. So that is the sad state. And that's when I say that the marketers are purely or mostly from the creative side of the house and not on the quantitative technology side. This is the culmination of that problem. Now, that's exactly what has brought us to the current scenario. Now, the key thing is, at this point in time, we started getting together as a community. Instead of each marketer trying to solve the problem for his or her company, we are saying, let's come together as a community. Now, there are two CMOs, myself and the CMO of IBM.
Yes.
We got together and we are leading a task force for the entire industry on data and technology. And we are looking at everything, right from, educating our people, which means our community, across all the companies, in providing them with the details about the companies which we find are very good in terms of marketing technology. What should be the kind of contracts that you should have? How do you measure ROI? How do you decide how your data architecture should be? So we are demystifying the whole thing and trying to put together a playbook. And this is being done under the auspices of an organization called ANA, which is the Association of National Advertisers, which is the equivalent of WFA, but based in the United States. And in the US. And we are making very, very good progress on this.
Raja, you've talked in the book and you make the case for the use of blockchain technology to weed out, superfluous intermediaries and to also sort of prevent opportunities for fraud and corruption. You're talking about a US Department of Justice investigation that's ongoing. Tell me, why is it that marketers why is it that the industry hasn't been able to address it already?
So here is the thing, right? Typically, when you're putting money behind any media, the publisher gets X amount of dollars. You would expect that what you're paying, most of it goes to the publisher. That's what we call as the working media, the media money that is actually working in
Yes.
terms of buying you the media space or the media time. However, because the field has become so technologically crazy and complicated that marketers don't understand what is happening. So, what happens? A series of intermediaries then keep coming in. These are either people who are counting or people who are verifying those who are counting. It's literally become like a ecosystem that's unbelievably crazy. And you have got now less than 60%, in some cases, almost as low as 40% of the money that a marketer spends goes to the publisher. That's a sad state of affairs. Literally, your efficiency then is less than 50%. That's number one. Number two, you need to understand how they, for example, if I'm saying I'm paying for 10 impressions, am I really getting 10 impressions? Are they being 10 impressions served in front of real human beings?
Or
Or are
bots.
they
Yeah.
right? And if they are bots, why am I paying for the
Yeah.
bots, right? And it's all becomes so complex that most of the times marketers are trusting the system a little blindly, which is, and therefore you have got all these intermediaries coming and saying, I'll validate it for you, I'll check for
Sure.
you, I'll
Yeah.
pre-screen for you, and so on and so forth. So this is one part of it. Now, the other part of it is there are also some unholy alliances between the media companies and the other folks who are involved in the ecosystem, with the result of which there have been accusations of kickbacks and so on. And that's where the Department of Justice investigation is happening. And, there was a report published almost, I think, 3 or 4 years back. And so that's another big mess that is out there. Now, the thing is, from a marketer's point of view, unless they get their head around at least a working knowledge about how this entire ecosystem works, and that's unfortunately technology led, right?
Yes.
And unless they understand the technology, they are
That
not able
playbook,
to get
Raja,
their
it all
heads
it be a lot of that playbook is going to be very important. The one that you guys are creating.
I know, absolutely. And that's precisely the reason why we are trying to create that, right? To educate our folks and try to get them up the curve. So at least they understand what is happening and ask the right questions and understand the answers when they are given. So this is what is the state of affairs right now. So it's not because marketers are, sort of casual and callous about it. That's not the thing at all. It's a question of lack of knowledge. And this is true, not just in one country or two countries, but it's a global phenomena that we have got, unfortunately.
Right. Let's talk about, the most visible and perhaps expensive part of the marketing spend that at least consumers and viewers get to see, and that's advertising. And your book, you've got a chapter where you go out and say advertising is dead. Of course, you've got as we know it in brackets is dead. I find it interesting that we're talking in a week after America just hosted its Super Bowl, and we saw, more than 30 plus new commercials that were out, and we heard about Reddit doing a 5-second spot because that was all it could afford and a big gimmick. And then you heard about Bruce Springsteen, finally doing a commercial after all these years. Tell me, in the fifth paradigm, will big sports, the big game moment still be as important, as culturally, as emotionally impactful as it is today?
So there are two different things you have asked here. One is, will the big moments of sports, live sports, or the concerts, whatever, are they
Yes.
going to be existing? The answer
Yeah.
is absolutely yes. The second part of it is advertising, the way we know, is dead. The answer is yes as well. I'll just give you a couple of scenarios, right? Put yourself in the shoes of a consumer. You're a consumer, right? How much do you enjoy when you're watching a YouTube video being interrupted every 3 or 5 minutes right there? No, we are talking of consumers needing to have a seamless, smooth, frictionless experience that is delightful. And here you are, as a marketer, putting in ads to destroy the experience of the consumers, right? So when I watch videos, and it's such a lousy experience for me, every few minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, an ad keeps coming in. And what do I do at that time? I'm just waiting for the skip button to come so that I can click it and then move on. So that's the kind of interaction I have with the ads. Point is, as a consumer, then what do? more than 600 million people, and the estimates go all the way up to 2 billion. But even at a minimum, 600 million consumers are installing ad blockers. Number one. Number two, they're going to ad-free environment where they're willing to pay money. So they're saying, I'm so sick and tired of your ads that I'll go to ad-free environment. And it is happening at scale. 2 weeks back, Netflix has made an announcement that they have crossed 200 million subscribers.
Yes.
And they're watching more than 1.5 billion hours of content every single week, which means that span of attention or that time spent in front of screens are not available to marketers. So if consumers are telling you, I don't want your advertisements, they're an interruption to my experience, I'm putting ad blockers, and I'm even willing to pay to keep your pests out. So as marketers, do you still want to hold on to the old paradigm and continue as though nothing has happened? That is insensitivity, and that's not smart. So it's going to dramatically change, which brings me back to then how do I communicate my message to these people? Now, experiential marketing is going to be huge. Experiences are something which consumers value. When they have a great experience, they become your advocates and they spread the word of mouth thanks to the social media on steroids. So therefore, if you are curating and creating experiences that are unique to your brand that consumers are delighted by, life is going to be good. But the key thing is, are you able to do it at scale and economically? So when you say live moments going to be there, live events going to be there, the answer is absolutely yes. These live events don't necessarily have to be only in a stadium or in a concert hall. They can happen virtually in the digital channels, which is going to be huge.
Raja, we've had a long, comprehensive conversation. I've got to thank you. Do you want to leave us with any closing words? Any words of sort of advice for a young guy who is already in the field of marketing and is feeling a little overwhelmed and is sort of having to get ready for this fifth paradigm that you've outlined?
No, first and foremost, as a marketer, if you want to be a successful marketer, you need to broaden your mindset. You need to become a general manager. Don't specialize linearly in marketing. You have to be like Leonardo da Vinci. Get an understanding of finance, get an understanding of data, technology, public relations, understand how your business makes money, and then try to connect the dots between your marketing actions and the business outcomes. The world is changing so fast that you can become obsolete very quickly if you don't keep up to date. So spend time learning and staying contemporary. There is so much amount of free course materials that are out there, like the Coursera's of the world, where you can really educate yourself, but it requires dedication. At this stage in my life, I'm still spending literally every single week at least 5 hours reading or doing a course or a combination. I do reverse mentoring. Now, if I can do, everyone else can do. And the reason why I say this is because, they say as age advances, your ability to learn new things sort of shrinks. So if you're somebody who is young, in those 5 to 10 hours that you can spend, you can learn so much and you can come up the curve so rapidly. I would really urge you to do that. Last point I would say is, don't be overwhelmed or don't be disillusioned. The key thing is, companies need marketing in future like never before because of the intense, brutal competition that's going to be there. There is no better time to be in marketing than now. So take heart in that and also realize that technology and all these are not tests on you, but these are tools given to you. If you know how to use the tools, you can win big time. So go for it and all the very best.
I think those are great words to end on. It's a great conversation. Thank you. Good luck with the book. And maybe we'll catch you when you visit India next.
Thank you so much, Anuradha. Really, really appreciate having me on the show. And please stay safe. Be well.
Thank you. And thank you very much for watching. Look out for another conversation on the Media Dialogues next week.